Hello, everyone, and we are back, and we are now going to talk a little bit about, again, our goal is to create this kind of quantitative analysis for obtaining total uncertainty of our measurement. So it's a comprehensive type of error analysis. The two predominant forms of error are that we're going to be dealing with most often are bias and precision error. And when you do an experiment, you typically either do a single sample experiment or repeated sample experiment. Um, Obvious or not obviously, but you're probably most familiar with repeated sample experiments. You run an experiment multiple times. You could measure a parameter several times in order to get statistics and to do that type of analysis. This is going to be the most common scenario, and so we're going to perform analysis or think about how do we calculate uncertainty for this particular case or subgenre of experiments. The single sample experiments, obviously, those occur when it's a very expensive experiment, it's a one-time event, you can observe it, and then you have to kind of analyze that. That requires smaller sample statistics and different toolkits to analyze, but we'll be touching on that a little bit in this class as well. And we should remember, again, a sample is an individual measurement on a specific quantity from a population. So if I have a group of marbles, that's my whole population. If I grab in and I grab one marble and measure that, that's a sample, and I'm trying to measure multiple measurements to get an idea of what is that total population. So like in the air, I can't measure the entire volume in temperature at each specific location, but I want to measure it in several locations to get an idea of what is the true population measurement. So when we calculate the total uncertainty, it's going to be this combination of precision and bias error in some specific variable x or measure and. So that's kind of our goal, is to get this in order to calculate our error bar. Sometimes, and lots of times, you're not going to look at, and many experimentalists will not consider bias error, but we will be doing that in this course to get our best, the most comprehensive estimate of error. So that's effectively our goal. Now, we want to have the most robust and precise measurement system when we design an experiment. So we want to, before we perform an experiment, we want to try to minimize these errors. There's a couple of kind of approaches that we can do. Again, we want to avoid approaches that require too large numbers to be measured to determine the small difference between them. We want to amplify essentially some signal strengths to improve sensitivity. We want to filter out noise. And again, we don't want large correction factors. Again, we want to minimize the influence of the measuring system on the measured variable. We want very, very good calibration. These are the things that we can do. We want to be cognizant of bias error and precision error when we're designing our system in order to minimize that. Because once the system is developed, it's very expensive to go back and minimize that error. So we want to be able to do that prior to performing the experiment. Now, once we have analyzed the experiment, and once we've analyzed and looked at, or once we've measured, we've built our apparatus, we've gathered our data, we've analyzed our data. One of the difficult parts about being an engineer is we have to communicate these results. Again, and not only to our peers, but to an audience that may not have the technical background that we have. So we have to make sure that we are able to communicate to different audiences. And to that end, there are lots of different types of technical writing. Executive summary is kind of this high-level document, minimal, zero equations, probably not even a figure, that is communicated to someone that may not have any technical background, a CEO, a business person, lead. So we need to be able, it's a one-pager document. A technical memo is slightly larger, 4 pages. Again, higher-level audience, maybe a figure or two, maybe some information about your experiment, but not as detailed. And you can go all the way to full technical report or technical paper where you really, every single detail, even model numbers on experimental apparatuses are included. So there's a range, and we need to be able to communicate in these different ranges of audiences and technical writing forms. The technical, the technical report can be up to it could be several hundred pages and super, super detailed for a very, very specific, highly technical audience as well. Graphs. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and that is very, very true. You are limited in the number of graphs that you can create when you're doing some types of technical communication. So those graphs need to tell the full story even before you get into your legend. So those are really, really critical. There's a bunch of tips for how we want to plot in this course. We want to have axes labels that are legible. We want to have very detailed legends and captions. You want to explain that figure should be able to be understood without even reading the caption. We want very clear colors and different symbols and colors that indicate different types of experimental measurements. We need error bars. Minimize the lettering. No figure title is required. No grid lines. Stick with these color palettes if you can, for the most part. And so those are our goal. Line fitting. So again, I harp on this R-squared value. We want to make sure our fitting matches with the physical experiment and expectation that we're looking for. So R-squared value is important, but again, R-squared value of what type of function? That's really what we're looking for here. So that is extremely, extremely, extremely important. So we want to make sure that when we fit a function and you put the equation, if it's appropriate, you explain that and, again, connect it to the physical system. So that is it. So next time, we're going to be getting into a little bit of, we'll give you a little hint, of some histograms, samples, and then probability and some probability permutations, conditions, and we'll get into some of the fun stuff. And then into confidence intervals and all of these other great things. So we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.